Now, the Kenya justice system could be helping criminals get away. Attorney General Professor Aggrey Otieno says Kenya is among the few countries in the world that grant suspects of nearly all crimes bail. The suspects also have a right to the evidence to be used against them, including the list of the witnesses and their statements. This has led to witnesses tampering and the cases being withdrawn. The Attorney General and leaders of the justice sector during a seminar on human trafficking and other international crimes said this, and Andrew Cheng has more.
The increasing profitability in the illegal trafficking of human beings has seen its rise globally, especially with the wars, dictatorships and hard economic times in many countries. Kenya is among the countries that serve as transit points for many immigrants being trafficked to South Africa or to Europe and America. While some are easier to manage, others who live in secluded communities are much more difficult to find out.
Some of the societies like the Indians, the Chinese, are closed-up society. People can come and be trafficked, and they stay in their houses without doing anything. There are also girls who come from India, Nepal, and they only dance in the night. So you have to become some nocturnal activity to get to know who they are.
Yet often, those being trafficked are the victims, and the Attorney General wants law enforcement officers to be more humane when dealing with them.
We've had a default mechanism where the system treats the victim as a criminal, and where the system does not concentrate on the trafficker as the criminal. That's what we want to fix by working together.
We actually don't jail them so that they actually don't end up the double jeopardy, that they have been trafficked, having lost their money, and then they end up in jail. We, as a department, I think my accounting officer, in a month, we use close to about 4 to 5 million to actually deport these people, or rather repatriate. And particularly, these are the Ethiopians and the Eritreans, and of course, the Somalis.
Arresting the kingpins, however, is difficult. There is the complex nature of international crimes, but even when arrested, the justice system may be at fault, appearing to favor the suspect instead of the victim because he is entitled to bail and access to all the evidence against him.
Police begin by giving the evidence they will use in the prosecution of a suspect to the suspect. Then the suspect is entitled to bail. The minute he is bailed, he takes his evidence and begins to hunt down the people who want to testify against him. And then we have a fiasco, a terrible fiasco.
The person on trial is not the victim. The person on trial is the accused person, and they have as many rights as the victims have. The balancing act is on a case-to-case basis, and if grounds are given that this person is not entitled to bail, we then do not grant bail.
Kenya also finds itself a victim because of its citizens who are mistreated abroad. The government says it has now put in place more strict measures for agencies that send Kenyans to work abroad, especially in the Middle East. The agencies are under more scrutiny now and have been mandated to ensure the Kenyans they send and be responsible for bringing them back should there be need. Even though human trafficking is a global problem, some of the issues that make people vulnerable to it remain beyond their control. These include wars and economic crisis all over the world. Andrew Ochieng, NTV.
That story by Andrew Cheng acts as a segue to our conversation here in the morning. We are discussing all about human trafficking and how also it is an existential global transnational threat, where also we can see traffickers of terrorism acts also. They're using this particular conduit to perpetrate their evil. And if you had actually woken up with us and watched the show from the beginning, I'd introduced our guest, but I will do that again for you so that you can get to know who we are talking about this morning. And this is in light of that conference that is going on as well, which was happening yesterday. They will tell us more about it this morning. And we have with us Lisa Madigan, who is the Attorney General from Illinois State in the United States of America. Ruth Gachanja, she's an advocate, advisory committee on counter trafficking in person. She's an advocate of the High Court, and she's the chairperson of the advisory committee on counter trafficking in person. Also, we have Florence Mwangangi, an advocate of the High Court, and also member of the Judicial Service Commission. We have as well Jacinta Nyamosi, the senior assistant from the Director of Public Prosecutions. And we have with us, well, where I placed his, let me try and see, just have it with me here, I'm just a bit confused. Aggrey Otieno is a program coordinator of the African Network for the Prevention and Protection Against Child Abuse and Neglect. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning.
Right, let's just begin with this particular conference that we had yesterday, the highlight of it and why you saw it deemed or fit to be actually held yesterday. And what are the highlights of that particular conference as well? Let's just begin with you, Jacinta.
Thank you very much. For me, the fact that we got all the stakeholders, especially in the Kenyan context, brings out the fact that there is a multi-sectoral approach in the fight against human trafficking. Mm-hmm. It was also very important when we heard from the US, mm-hmm. We got to see that they also have their own challenges, yes. Their problems, which problems we are also encountering as a country. Mm-hmm. And we felt that we can, we got to learn a lot from them, and I guess they also learned a lot from us. Yes. Definitely the fact that the stakeholders have come together in such kind of a forum means that there is that will to fight human trafficking. All
right. From my intro also I mentioned about Kenya, scaling down from the first tier to the second tier. What diametrically or what difference does it make? Is there any discernible difference about these particular tiers? If maybe you can enlighten us on this as well.
Actually, we were in tier 2. Tier 2. At some point we were tier 2 watch list, then we got promoted. So we've never been to tier 1. So
it's, you've never been to tier 1?
Yes.
How so? So it is, because I read I got a bit confused, tier 2, tier 2.
Yeah, there is tier 1, which is the best, then tier 2, then there is tier 2 watch list, then there is the tier 3.
All right, so what is the difference for the benefit of our viewers?
What happens is that in all these tiers, the US State Department, they usually have a report on human trafficking every year. And what they do is to rank countries based on those tiers. Tier 1 being the best, tier 3 being the worst in terms of meeting minimum standards mm-hmm. in addressing human trafficking issues. Mm-hmm. So Kenya for some time have been on tier 2 watch list, but in the year 2015 we got promoted to tier 2. Mm-hmm.
All right, 20.9 million victims of human trafficking globally, as estimated by the International Labour Organization. Is this number staggering to you, Lisa?
It is, and I think most people don't realize the pervasiveness of human trafficking. It's happening in every single country in the world, and many people who are like us and are well aware of what's taking place, both the sex trafficking and the labor trafficking, recognize that in many ways and for far too many people, this really is modern day slavery, and it is something that we have to work hard to eradicate. It is just unacceptable that in this day and age we are allowing young girls, young boys, adult women and adult men to essentially be controlled, to have themselves commodified. Somebody is making money off of them, and they are not able to, fulfill their God-given potential. And so it really was wonderful to have the opportunity for me to come to Kenya and to meet with everybody in every sector who's working on this problem, and to hear, as Jacinta said, very similar concerns, very similar challenges that we face in the United States as it's being faced here in Kenya.
Mm-hmm. But when we talk about, especially from the United States, and we have these very stringent rules that we have with the current administration, executive orders on also immigration as well, in what way do you think this also exacerbates the situation? Because now the doors are not open. The stringent rules are now to get to the American or other areas of when you're talking about European immigration as well.
So what I can tell you is that in the United States, what is happening, unfortunately, because of many of the changes that have taken place with the new administration, is that for individuals who either are undocumented immigrants in our country, they are very fearful right now of coming forward to law enforcement, to the government. They always were, but it has gotten even worse. And so for those individuals who are most vulnerable to these types of trafficking, it is going to be even less likely that we find out that there is a problem. Mm-hmm. And as I said, it's a very underreported or unreported crime as it is. So we struggle in terms of law enforcement response to find out that this is taking place, to prosecute, to have witnesses who cooperate, because they are very leery of working with the government, working working with law enforcement. So the changes that have taken place from the federal administration have made that even more difficult in the United States.
Right. Ruth, she talks about, yes, very limited or documented cases because maybe they're not reported or they're underreported. Is this a case also of, the voices being muffled, or maybe also the media is not really fixated on what is really happening with this human trafficking? Because we see other media outlets, they are holding campaigns as well to try and stem out the issue as well. But why is there underreporting when it comes to human trafficking?
Well, I think underreporting is basically because of two things. One is people do not understand what human trafficking is. I mean, I think if you were to take a poll just here and ask people, what is human trafficking? People will not be able to really explain what it is. So number one, that is the first problem, is that understanding what really human trafficking actually is. The other thing is also our law enforcement agencies not being able to really understand what human trafficking is. In Kenya, we have a law, Counter-Trafficking in Persons Act, and I think very few people actually know that it exists. And so therefore you find people when they report, they say, there is this case of either child labor, or they'll report it as forced labor, for instance, or child labor when it comes to children. And so therefore they'll not be able to really capture the essence of human trafficking. Also the media, I mean, they're doing a great job. Just recently I've been reading a few reports here and there, and I think they've been doing a good job in terms of reporting. But as you're saying, you have other media houses that are having campaigns against human trafficking. And in Kenya, we haven't seen that yet. So I think that is one of the issues that we're actually looking at in terms of reporting. Yeah.
So do we have, maybe we should have begun by defining what human trafficking is all about, because we're just writing on assumption everyone understands. Maybe when we combine that particular traffic and human, people think about, people en masse walking, to a particular conference or in the street. Let's come to you, Florence. Do you break it down for us? Human trafficking, what is it all about, and why do we think that human trafficking is not really such a sexy story to tell?
Can I just start by correcting that I'm not a sitting member of the JSC. I am immediate former member.
Immediate former member.
Yes.
Okay, it seems I was given wrong information. My apologies.
Okay, so now the definition of human trafficking is given not only in the Kenyan laws, but also on the international level. We have the UNTOC. This is the United Nations Convention Against Transnational Organized Crime and related protocols, so that you find that human trafficking is where you are changing the human being into a merchandise. And the underlying factor is making money, making not just profit, but money out of selling the humans. And most of the time you find that the person who is being trafficked may not be knowing that they're being trafficked, or they may know and they're willing. And you find that they're being driven by a fact of a promise of a better life, because they have been living in poverty and they want to live in a better life in that other destination that they're being taken to. But then later, as it turns out to be, they turn out to be merchandise and used in various ways, some of which, of course, include prostitution and forced labor in the farms, in the homes. And this cuts across all gender. It can be female, it can be male. It also cuts across all age. It can be young children, it can be adults, and relatively older people, because they all have some way to serve in whatever destination they are being taken to.
All right. If we may come back to you, Jacinta, just give us a picture of the conference. It was a one-day conference, right? Do you think also you could have thrashed out all the matters about human trafficking within one day? It must have been a very intense day. Did you begin at 8 o'clock?
Fairly, let's say we started about 9 o'clock.
9 o'clock.
My take is that we needed more time.
You needed more time.
We needed more time, basically because human trafficking has actually not really been understood. And we needed to know what role each and every actor needs to play. So I don't think we were able to tackle everything. We needed people to understand what kind of human trafficking, for instance, is in Kenya. People have always thought human trafficking is just on international level. People also needed to know that there is domestic human trafficking, and it might even be larger. A situation where you find you get a house girl, for instance, coming from up country, and she believes that she's been removed from her home to another place so that she can be educated. And then when she's brought back, let's say, to an urban center like Nairobi, she's instead of her, going ahead to go for an education, she's now used as a house girl, okay? That is not the intention. That's not what you wanted to come through. So people also need to be educated that human trafficking doesn't really have to be cross borders. It is within our own, you know,
so it
our
could be
own
the domestic human
yes.
trafficking, so to speak.
So there's so much on human trafficking, the intricacies,
yeah.
and it is really unfortunate that most of the people don't even know that they are trafficking themselves. They actually don't know. You find that you think it's just normal. So, and we also needed to bring in so many other actors. We also needed like to bring in on board the people like chiefs who actually come across these victims on the first instance. So for me, I think if we can be able to get a situation where we get more days, articulate and, you know, make a situation where it's all public, the media must also come out. And also, I believe the media also will need some education out of it. So that when it comes out, we'll be teaching not only ourselves as the actors or the bearers of offices in government institutions, but we are out there to teach the public.
Thank you. Let's come to Lisa. We'll, of course, continue this conversation. But I want just to know, what is the sort of a ticklish situation or a case you've really had in office in, of course, Illinois, when it comes to human trafficking, that you felt this was a complicated case?
Well, I'm going to give you an example of labor trafficking, because oftentimes, and even yesterday, when we talk about human trafficking, almost everybody's in agreement that sex trafficking is a crime. But there's a lot of conversation, and I think a lot of different views when it comes to labor trafficking, where people think, look, maybe the example that Jacinta just gave, it's not necessarily trafficking. It's more of a situation where somebody from a rural community who is, you know, doesn't have a lot of opportunity comes to an urban area and she gets a job. And in that circumstance, well, then that's fine. That's not a violation of the law. But in fact, it can be. And certainly in the United States, we have many circumstances where we have laws in place about minimum wages, overtime pay, how old you can be in terms of working, similar laws to what you have here. But we see those being violated by the employer to an extent that it can also result in forced labor. When there's a circumstance that the employer is charging somebody, in essence, for getting the job, they're taking them to and from the job so that they don't actually have any freedom of movement. They're housing them in substandard conditions. They're physically abusing them, they are yelling at them and mistreating them. And so in those circumstances, we have done a lot, and we've actually brought a case against an employment agency where they were taking undocumented workers from some of the Central American countries and placing them in Chinese buffet restaurants and ending up in a situation that I just described. They'd be working 11 to 13 hours a day for as little as $3.50 an hour, which in the United States is far below our minimum wage, which in Illinois is $8.25 an hour. Not getting overtime pay, not allowed to, you know, live where they wanted to live. So very, very poor conditions that we have gone after.
Thank you. Thank you.